Isn't it true we often think of life as a continuum? That is to say, we're always moving into the future. And indeed, that may describe us well from a chronological perspective. After all, those numbers keep advancing, 37, 38. You remember that? 39. And yet life often finds us dealing with or in denial regarding matters of the past. And yet this we know, we can't relive it, we can't edit the past, but we can revisit it. As needs of the heart and of the soul and of the spirit continually press in upon our conscience, establishing within us a lifestyle from either a passive and dismissive perspective, just let it go, or living with a passionate and engaged platform of anticipation as we look toward our future. In the gospel lesson, the scribes and the Pharisees were not passive. Rather, they were continually engaging Jesus and ever badgering him about his behavior, particularly when he intentionally chose to associate with those who, in the view of religious elders, were the sinners. They were the outcast. They were the other. Why would Jesus associate with them? What was his motive? Why not simply be passive, if not dismissive, rather than passionate about those others labeled, again, sinners and outcasts and the like? But the motives, and the motive is important, the motive of Jesus was clear. Not simply to engage others in their trials and their tribulations and even in their sinfulness, but to engage them for the purpose of offering an invitation to transformation. And I like to say, when Jesus enters in, Jesus does not simply take charge, but Jesus, the Spirit of God, desires to take over. And such is the purpose and sets the tone for our parable. We've all heard it. The feisty young son, for whatever reason, isn't seeing a future with his nose to the grindstone working on the farm. It's just not edifying. It's not as edifying, apparently, as the older brother appeared. Aha, the young man is mesmerized, contemplating greener pastures. And he wants to get out there into those greener pastures, and not at some time in the distance, but now. And so he pleads passionately with his father. Father, please offer the inheritance. He needs that inheritance, you see, to set his mind and his spirit, his life out and offer him a way out to the far country of freedom. Freedom. Freedom from the Father, freedom from the Son, freedom from the family. Wow, freedom for delighting in the life that he was imagining. We might say of wine and women and song. And it all evolved quite well, as we know, for a while, for a time. For a time until the curtain drops of his fantasy life as the bottom falls out when the money runs out. And he transitions from drinking wine to literally whining as he eats with the pigs. His high life has now found him at the bottom of the barrel. And he must be thinking, now what you gonna do? What you gonna do? No question about it, he had messed up. He had squandered the money. He had lived in a life of sin and immorality to the point where nobody was offering him a place to stay or even a bite to eat. He was literally and figuratively in the pig pen of life. Now what? And each time I read this text, it reminds me of 50 years ago in a Billy Graham sermon to young people where he said, remember, for every kick, there's a kick back. And aha, that young man in the pig pen was getting the kick back. Having said this, I doubt that there are few among us who have not ventured to some degree to that far country, to that far country where our thoughts or our actions have caused regret or remorse or angst over that which we did or that which we didn't do. That said, Jesus, it does not mention in the story of the prodigal whether the prodigal felt remorse, sorrow, guilt, regret. But it does say this about the young man, that he returned. He returned, returning without any certainty of the welcome or consequence that he might anticipate. And how would he have returned? Most likely, as certainly, penniless, a pauper, embarrassed, ashamed, fearful, who knows? However, his future would be dependent on those who would receive him or reject him, judge him or possibly dismiss him. Or could reconciliation be an option? Reality says that the human tension of our mind is often between judgment or acceptance, between guilt or innocence. However, reconciliation and renewal shares a much less common reality in the mix of our human behavioral choices. That said, most of you know my story. My birth mother, when I was 2, literally abandoned her family without notice,